Well, it's funny. So growing up, I mean, I had no idea you could surf in New York. None.
Is that?
None whatsoever. And it's like, not only am I a lifelong New Yorker, I'm a fifth generation New Yorker. Right?
That's amazing.
And
Manhattanite, no less.
total Manhattanite. And so it was just not in my consciousness at all, the idea that there was a surf town in New York.
In the audiobooks, when you were, I actually listened to it on audiobook
yeah?
too, because I read, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go over it again, because I really wanted to be prepared. And when you were talking about that part about, the pivotal part, and at that part of your life anyway, I mean, thank God life's a marathon and not a destination, that you really seem moved when you were reading that part of the book.
Yeah. Well, I think the hardest parts to read, I think, were actually like around my mother's death, that part, and probably around the divorce. But it was, I mean, the team that I worked with doing that were just amazing, right? And so we would come to a point where, I was reading and maybe I was, completely about to burst into tears, and I would just stop, and they would just say, take your time, right? And so there was no sense of, oh, I have to read this through perfectly. I could pause and collect myself and then just continue with the sentence. It was a really, really, really interesting experience, partly because we were doing this during the pandemic.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so I didn't go into a studio to do it. They sent me all the recording equipment, and I set it up in my bedroom, which I turned into a recording studio by essentially creating a padded cell. Right. So I like taped pillows to the windows. I put like pillows and blankets and things to covering the windows, and it took about 3 days. So the bedroom was like that for 3 days, and so so I was like, okay, it looks like a crazy person lives here. But
you're staying over, you lean up against the wall.
And I think the way I did is that I created a little booth in my closet. So I put the table with the microphone in front of the closet. I had a chair, and then, because I felt like that would muffle the sound, having like the mic in with the clothing. And then I had a ladder. I think I had I had like a ladder and a folding screen, and I put a quilt up over that, and that was that was my booth. Because
how big was the booth? I mean, what?
It was
like a cube.
It was. It was.
Oh, wow.
It was. Sort of.
All right.
Just enough to get a chair.
Like an average size apartment in Manhattan.
Exactly. Exactly. It was a fascinating and fun and exhausting experience, and I don't know that I would do it again, but I did feel like the material is so personal that I when they asked if I would be interested, I was like, yeah, actually I would.
Yeah, I appreciate that you actually did the reading, because it really because I have a lot of stuff on audio.
Right.
I just because I drive my son in and out of Manhattan, because he's actually going to high school middle school on the Upper East Side. Did you go to Manhattan Center?
No, I went to Dalton.
You went to Dalton? Okay, yeah. I'm actually, believe it or not, a high school sports referee, middle school, high school, and I ref all Dalton, Sacred Heart, Spence, Chapin, Nightingale, all of that. How'd you wind up over there? I'm very glad to hear that, to be honest with you.
I went there from 2nd grade to 12th.
Really?
Yeah, I had gone to ethical culture for, let's see, I went to Riverside Church Nursery School, and then I went to ethical from, I think, what was that, kindergarten and 1st grade? I think kindergarten and 1st grade, and then I transferred to Dalton.
That's great.
Yeah.
So just straight across the west side?
Yeah.
I mean, west to east, 96, straight across?
Yeah, straight across. We go across 86th.
Okay.
86th Street Crosstown.
Right.
Then called the M18.
Okay.
So I would meet my best friend My best friend and I would meet every morning on the corner, which was the corner of 90th and Central Park West, because she lived on 92nd, and then we would walk together to 86th Street and take the bus.
Well, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
That's great education.
Yeah.
And college.
I loved it. I loved that
Okay.
school.
Oh, surf camp in Nosara?
Yes.
If we can go. And we'll hit everything, you know. And,
oh my God.
And we haven't even talked about us. Or who's playing me in the movie. Can before we even get there, so this is actually going to become, is it still in the talks, or are they actually shooting? Or
no, they're not shooting yet. So it is still in development, so it has not yet been greenlit.
Okay.
But, you know, we'll see how they decide to adapt it. If it gets made, I would have some kind of, you know, executive producer role, but only if I'm not really involved in the creative process at this point.
Fair enough, you know. Yeah. And is it going to be like a series or like 10 episodes or
no? At the moment,
a 2-hour movie, something like that. Okay.
At the moment, it is conceived as a feature film.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is.
No,
who would have thought in a million years? You know. No, Sarah. So here we are. Go ahead. Wait, there's one part that you're out in the middle, and I'm just gonna, like, we've all been there. I've had leash snap, board guard, and I'm like, you know, I only came out here to have a good time.
I know.
You know, and
no, it was no fun at all. So that was Puerto Rico. I just, you know, I had never been in that kind of current before, and it just took me away. And it wasn't a rip or anything. It was just the kind of prevailing current of the place just took me away.
You just can't control anything now. You're at the mercy of whatever's going on.
Right. And the problem was that I couldn't paddle in where I was, because it's sort of one of those things where there's a beach and then there's reef, and so
you can't go on.
So you can't go. You have to go. You have to get back to the beach, because that's the only place that you can get in without getting your legs completely ripped up. Plus, I had, you know, a rental board, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna ruin the board, right? So, you know, now I think, well, I might handle that differently, right? I might just find a scarier place to go in, right? And who cares what happens? Like, I'll pay for the board, right? That's not right. But I was caught up in, like, not wanting to ruin the board, but also not wanting to get myself all ripped up, because it's pretty sharp and scary. So yeah, there were a few moments where I was just like, really? Am I not going to make it in? Is that possible? Right?
That's not
right, because
when Diane's potentially on the table, it's not.
I know.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but I think for me, partly, and I wasn't panicking so much, but I was having very, kind of very dark, dire thoughts and feelings being out there, but it was sort of like what wouldn't compute for me in a way was, I'm like, okay, I can see the shore. I can see my friends. I mean, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller as I drift away, but I can see them. Like, I can see where I need to be. I must be able to get there. There has to be a way for me to get there. Yeah. I mean, it's like, or, you know, but then at one point I was like, should I just go, you know, like this? Should I just signal that I need help? And I was like, no, you're not really there. You're not there yet. So anyway, so I just, you know, stuck with it and, you know, kind of motored through the pain and the exhaustion and the fear, and kind of laughed at myself at various times, and, you know, managed to get myself back in. But it is amazing how instantly you can just go from, ooh, hoo, hoo, I'm in the water, to, oh my God, I can't get back, right? So,
and that's usually how it goes.
Exactly.
It's in an instant.
It's an instant.
And it's very frustrating to be in a situation where you're doing everything you can and the situation's not improving.
I know. I was just like, okay, I'm paddling. Oh, nope, I'm drifting. I'm going to take a rip. Oh, nope, I'm right back where I started. Okay, I'm paddling. Nope, nope. So, you know, it is what it is.
Okay, so that was that particular station.
That was
so now,
yeah.
Down to Nosara, and again, it's, you know, here we are, we're adults, and we're surfers, and really it is the epicenter of everything.
Right.
Everything, you know, look, you live in Rockaway Beach, you're a block from the ocean.
Right.
Life, regardless of you work every day, you know, life revolves around the ocean.
Revolves
the tides,
around
the winds.
But it's also, so life revolves around the ocean in terms of, as you're saying, the tides, the winds, like when am I going to be able to get in, the swell, the direction, all of that. But it also revolves around the weather. And, you know, is it going to storm? What's going to happen? Will there be flood? Right? And so I think it's interesting and different to live in a place where you feel so connected to the elements, right? Like your greatest pastime comes from what the ocean gives you and what the weather creates, but also your entire life, you know, like, am I going to go into Manhattan today? No, because I'm likely to have to, you know, wade through the floods to get back home, right? Right? Like if you have a choice, obviously. Like if you have to go to work, you have to go to work. But so there's a lot that that gets determined by the rhythms of the weather and the ocean.
I agree. And not only do we know the weather, we know the weather in depth. You know, not only do we know if the wind's blowing out of the north, but we know at 3 o'clock it's supposed to go west-northwest at 12 miles an hour.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it's just, and we all know it.
We all know. Well, it's funny. I now have, I don't know, maybe, I think it's like 6 or 7 things that I look at every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to bed, and then often throughout the day, right? And it is all of those, whether it's checking the buoys or checking the various weather maps and apps and looking and seeing, like, okay, long term, what's developing down in the Caribbean, right? Most surfers are looking to see, ooh, when's the next big swell? And I'm looking to see, ooh, when is that big swell going to go away and I can get in?
Yes.
Right?
Because those are the best days.
Well, but those are also the only days for me.
Because even like this last swell that came, all right, I mean, it had to be 6 to 8 foot.
It was big.
It was big.
It was big. It was double overhead some days.
Yes,
it
was.
There were days that I looked at and I was like, okay, I haven't seen it. I mean, this looks like Sandy, right? Just some days was not, I thought the conditions were not very good, but it was huge. Just those huge gray, they almost look like granite, right? Just lines coming in.
Yeah. And that was what was left of Ian.
Right.
And it just circled right outside of us.
It just sat.
And it was big. That was out of my league for sure.
Right.
But then the 4 to 5 foot day, and then the day after that was even better.
Yes.
Because now it's far enough away. It still has a little bit of punch to it, but like 2 to 3 foot. I love 2 to 3 foot.
Right. It also looked to me like towards the end of the swell event. And I don't know if this was because of the direction of things or because the sandbars have moved around. But those waves had way better shape than I had seen in a long time.
Yes, I agree with you.